Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Chairman Nadler and Chairwoman Bass, for holding this most important hearing. And Mr. Floyd, I want to thank you for being here today in this very difficult moment for you and your family. The murder of your brother, George Floyd, reminds us all that the relationship between public safety and those who they are sworn to protect can't be assumed to always be one that's a healthy relationship. In my district, the new Ellis Island of the United States, we're diverse and we're always changing. New Americans live side by side with the greatest generation. We have to remember that we are not a police state and we are not a police country, and that for public safety officers to do their job, trust and cooperation are essential. We've worked really hard over decades, the last few decades, to bring that trust into being, and that's why it is so sad to see again another murder, another tragedy in our streets. And this is exactly why this bill has to become law. When I was a California legislator, this issue kept popping up over and over again. In my work with the autism community, this issue again resurfaced about a decade ago. As police began to confront the tidal wave of maturing autistic children, we soon realized that police officers were not trained to deal with autistic adults. Autistic individuals not capable of following directions were considered to be uncooperative, and soon violent confrontations arose and were reported in the press. My work in this area in updating California police officer standards was soon brought to the attention of a retired police chief in the Midwest, the father of an autistic adult who was also trying to address the issue of autism in public safety. This clearly shows that police training is not a local issue, but a national issue. And again, this shows why this bill must become law. The Justice Policing Act of 2020 improves police training and practices by creating law enforcement development programs to develop policies, best practices, among others. In my legislation, H.R. 5251, Improving Community Safety Task Force, directs the Attorney General to also establish a task force seeking ways to reduce violent clashes between communities and public safety officers. And Mr. Chairman, at this point, I'd like to submit for the record a letter from Brian Marvel, President of the Peace Officers Research Association of California, discussing how they support reforms.
Without objection.
And Mayor Underwood, I want to let you know that your family's loss, your brother, will also not go forgotten. I have a question for Professor Butler. Welcome, first of all, sir, and welcome to all the witnesses.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to take a moment to discuss arrest disparities. The ACLU has said African Americans are almost 4 times more likely to be arrested for cannabis possession. For Washington, D.C., you have stated that African Americans are about 50% of those that use cannabis, yet they account for 90% of the people who are charged with marijuana crimes. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
How do you think the legalization of cannabis will help with social justice in this nation?
We think it would help create equal justice under the law. We know that for drug crimes, African Americans don't disproportionately commit those crimes. National Institute of Health says that we don't disproportionately possess drugs. Most people report buying drugs from someone of their own race. If you go from NIH and Bethesda to the Bureau of Justice Statistics in D.C., they'll tell you 60% people locked up for drug crimes are black. About 15% of people who do the crime, 60% of people who do the time. That's unequal justice under the law.
So would you say that we're mixing criminal justice with social issues, with medical issues when it comes to our national drug policy?
The drug addiction issue is an issue of public health, as is the issue of the epidemic of violence in communities. It's a public health issue, not exclusively a criminal law issue.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I yield.
The gentleman yields back.
Great senators. Hi, Chuck. He used to love me when I was a Democrat, you know.